This familiar piece of music is called Grandstand. For the record, on the record, played by the Queen's Hall Light Orchestra. And for 30 years it introduced on 3DB sport. This station has always had a very close affinity with sport from its very earliest days. One of the boys who came through the ranks is recognised today as one of sport's greatest contributors.
Referee levers them away once more. Famishon bleeding from the nose now. And the referee gets them away once more. Here comes the decision. It's a left and right into the body by Harada. Pushed Famishon back into the corner. Laying in there on him. And here comes the bell. And a draw. The referee has made it a draw.
Just as Ron Casey has been synonymous with sport on TV for 30 years, for almost as long in the domain of radio, Ron captured the excitement, the thrills of all sports, big and small, via the radio microphone for 3DB. His has been a magnificent career, which just recently reached a temporary punctuation point when he announced his retirement as general manager of HSV7. But it wasn't beer and skittles in the very early days. His good friend Bill Collins recalls.
If ever a fellow has dragged himself up to a wonderful position, Ron has, and he's a great bloke, Ron. Ron had a terrible problem with stuttering in his early days, of course, and he was able to overcome this. And he doesn't now, except when he perhaps gets very tired. He was a great worker. I don't know whether the Americans say indefatigable. Well, that's how Ron was. And he quickly took over when Eric Welsh retired. He did everything that Eric was involved in because he'd been more or less apprenticed to him in the wrestling and the bikes and you name it. And then when television came along, Ron, after 2 or 3 years, became involved in the sporting side of television. And the sport in those days, in the news and television, used to be you'd get the early editions of the Herald, or as late as you could, and you'd cut bits out and read them from a piece of paper. That's how it was done in the early days of the telly. And Ron did this very successfully and gradually brought other programs that originally from radio, such as Sports Forum and that sort of thing, took it onto television and an early morning, Saturday morning racing program, etc., and showed that he had a great knack for getting things organised, getting them together, and when the opportunity arose down there, he was the natural person to take over and be in charge of Channel 7. His history back here at 3DB is most important. He's been involved in so many things in the station.
That early speech impediment that Bill mentioned is not hidden by Ron.
I had a stammer. When I got nervous, I used to fall over myself. And Eric Pearce made the suggestion that I might get some help if I went to see a woman called May Hoban, who was she certainly wasn't a speech therapist, but I think she really was. She was a drama coach at the Pilgrim Theatre up in East Melbourne. And I used to toddle up there twice a week and stand up there and do the great declamatory verses and count to 200 on one breath, and it was terrific. Just do as you're told and do it again, you know. But eventually she overcame it.
Ron Casey has enjoyed the best of both worlds, 3DB in its halcyon era and the excitement of the early television days. But while he was caught up in the euphoria of all that was happening at Channel 7 down there in Dorcas Street, when he looked back toward the city at his old alma mater, 3DB, where had the station gone wrong?
I think that probably 3DB was just a little slow to adjust to television. I think 3UZ probably was the first station to make a move to compete with television by devising a different form of radio. And I think it was probably at that point that there were changes of management and things changed. And in the changeover, I think 3DB just lost the opportunity to move quickly to compete with television in a different way. I think 3DB probably tried to compete with television too long in its old style.
Think of Ron Casey and you think of World of Sport. Think of World of Sport and you think of Lou Richards. But Lou hasn't always been a television star. He came from 3DB. His close friend Ron Casey knows how it all began.
He was offered the situation of doing a column in The Sun, and on the same basis, it was an in-house situation. It'd be a good idea if he joined 3DB, and he did. Not just as a football commentator, But he worked for a long time with Dick Cranbourne on the breakfast program. And Louis is a very fast learner. And I think that Lou learnt his trade very, very well. Mind you, some of those Saturday... He did the breakfast session on a Saturday morning with Dick. And some of the Saturday mornings, Lou was not actually at his best. But he was still very good. Because Friday night down at the Phoenix used to be a fairly late night. But Lou would front on Saturday morning, and Dick Cranbourne would give him plenty. But he learnt the business very well, and he was involved with 3DB for a long, long time.
Lou seemed to take to the media like the proverbial duck to water.
Yes, although, of course, he'd been in hotels for quite a while. He went to a hotel firstly when he was playing at Collingwood, in the Town Hall Hotel in North Melbourne. And from there he graduated to the Phoenix and Flinders Street, the branch officer there on Weekly Times. And of course, Lou had a great style as a publican. I mean, he really did. He could tell a story, he could listen, and his personality was right. And so he was very comfortable in that situation. And I suppose, to a certain extent, that comfort stood him in good stead when he moved into radio.
And some years after moving into radio here at 3DB, he did the breakfast program firstly with Dick Cranbourne, and then he joined a very talented young man in John Anderson.
I was going to tell you a story, as a matter of fact.
Why don't you tell me a story, Lou?
Well, about this fellow was two fellows on the end of the pier, fishing.
Yeah.
And one had a beautiful fiberglass rod with a beautiful reel and all the proper, the gear to go with it. The other fellow had just a bamboo with a piece of string and a bent pin and a worm on it. The bloke with the good gear couldn't catch any fish at all. But the other fella's picking fish out left and right. He can't stop catching fish. And finally, the fella with the good gear is getting dirty on this. And he said to the bloke with the crook gear, he said, "How come you can catch all the fish? You got a rotten rod and everything about it's crook." Well, the fella said, "I'll tell you what I do." He said, "When I'm going fishing, I get to bed. My wife's lying on her left side. I fish on the left side of the pier. And I catch all the fish. If I'm going fishing the next time and she's lying on her right side, I stray to the right side and I catch all the fish." The fella said, "Well, what happens when your wife's lying on her back?" He said, "I don't go fishing."
And that's Lou. Lou Richards, a great character. Speaking of great characters, just for a few minutes back to one we were speaking of earlier, John Stewart. Everyone has a story on John, including Ron Casey.
I did a bit of wrestling in the old days, in very early days. And John Stewart, if he was in the mood, as he used to sometimes get in the mood, he'd want to wrestle me. And many of the time we've fallen down amongst the records in the record library, and I remember one Hague Cup, which was the golfing match between the radio stations, a very big event this day. We played at Kingswood, I think it was, and after the dinner, John wanted to wrestle me. It was very difficult in the rose bushes, I can assure you.
Ron Casey's thoughts on Lou Richards and John Stewart. And while asking Ron to hand out bouquets, we have to keep a very special one for his very close friend, Bill Collins.
Bill is the ultimate professional. Bill's the sort of guy that you can ask to do any job, and you'll know that it'll be well done. And he's so cooperative, always has been. In the early days at Channel 7, when things were a bit bumpy, I'd phone Bill, want a commercial done or some help somewhere. And Bill would come to the phone and he'd say, "Okay, what time do you need me?" Not how much or what for or anything else. That's the sort of guy he is. But a very, very professional broadcaster.
And what better opportunity do we have than this to remember one of Bill's best ever racing moments, which also happens to be one of his most recent. The finish of the 1986 WS Cox Plate at Moonee Valley.
Here come the New Zealanders, our Waverley Star and Bone Crusher. They've raced to the lead, 600 out. Have they gone too early? 2 lengths to Drought, running up the third from Society Bay. They were followed then by Drawn under the whip at the head of the others, Dinky Flyer. But our Waverley Star, he got a half length to Bone Crusher. He's gone for the whip on Bone Crusher. 3 lengths to Drought, followed then by Dinky Flyer and Drawn. But the 2 great New Zealanders have come away on the turn. Our Waverley Star, a half-length Bone Crusher. The Big Red won't give in. Drought running on. Bone Crusher responds to the whip. The roars of the crowd. He races up to our Waverley Star. 100 out. Bone Crusher, our Waverley Star. Stride for stride. Nothing in it. Our Waverley Star, the rails. Bone Crusher, the outside. And Bone Crusher races into equine immortality. $1.5 million as he photo finishes our Waverley Star.
Third is the Filbert, followed by Drought. Next is Dandy Andy, followed behind them by...
I believe the only problem with the media hype of Bill Collins as the accurate one is that it doesn't say enough. He certainly has accuracy, but so much more. Bill Collins' name will always remain up there with the biggest and the best in the history of sport and 3DB.